if you have a question, and, after we do the slide, we can do questions after the slide if there's one, or at the end, if you have any that you want to ask in general, we can, help the best that we can. The one thing about using characters and fandoms is it's definitely super adaptable, flexible. You can kind of mold a lot of it to your own needs. So there's not always a definite answer. It's going to be definitely viewpoint, your ability, your knowledge, because there are lots of fandoms, there's lots of characters, there's lots of people you can use, and it's going to be how you interpret or your client interprets them. So we will get started. So here we are. I'm a second-year doc student with Lindsey Wilson College and a counselor in Ohio, working primarily with kids, teens, and young adults.
And I'm a counselor in Tennessee, where I've been primarily school-based for the past few years, but I'm going into private practice, and I'm a fourth-year doctoral student in the CES program at Lindsey.
And we have teamed up because of our love of fandoms and using fandoms and characters and cinema therapy and different things like that to kind of think outside the box and ways to engage with clients and think of different ways to use interventions and get creative. We both really enjoy creativity. Okay, and a bunch of people are popping in, so I apologize if I stop. I'm just letting them in. All right. So this is just a copyright of disclosure that anything from here, like, you're encouraged to use it, but to give credit where credit's due. We give credit when we borrow things from other people, but a lot of this is going to be things that we have created on our own and things that we have worked together on. So this is just something. Any direct questions, there's my email. You can always shoot me an email if it's something that you want to share outside of that. Yeah, sure. Let me get the list. Debbie. All right. Oh, nope. Nope. Okay. People keep moving.
If you want me to focus on admitting people, I can do that.
Yeah. I'm trying to give Debbie co-host. Okay. Yes. Okay. There you go. All right. And we'll go on. So, question is, I don't know what brought you in here, but I'm happy that you're all here. So thanks for joining us. Why should we use villains? Well, why shouldn't we use villains? I don't know. I work with lots of kids, and most of the time it draws them naturally. And I really started thinking about it. I have kids, and I have a set of twins, and one of my sons is obsessed with the villain. He's never into the good guy or the hero or the one that's like the face of the whole show or brand. He always is like, I like the bad guy. Like, I want to be the bad one. And he's drawn to that. And I remember thinking, like, I wonder why this is. And then I started noticing the same type of thing when I worked with clients. So I started looking into resources and reading different articles where they talk about it. And for a lot of kids, there's an attraction to that because when we have all these pressures on us as individuals in society, we have to function a specific way, we have to behave a certain way, we're told to be good and behave and get A's. So a lot of times that freedom of, that bad guy gets to wear the cooler clothes and he gets to like punch people when he's mad, or he gets to have all that freedom that we don't always get to have. It's very attractive to us, right? To just think, how nice would it be to just throw caution to the wind and be like, heck with it. I'm going to put face paint on like the Joker, and I'm just going to tell people what I think and do what I want. So there's definitely attraction to that. Do you have anything you would add, Mariah?
Definitely the hedonism of the bad guys. The bad guys can absolutely do anything that they want to do and are only truly ever thwarted by the hero. Most regular people can't thwart them. So it's very very nice, very freeing to be the bad guy in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And then I like using characters, fandoms, references to cinema and things because it's so adaptable to your theoretical orientation that you want to prescribe to. You can adjust and motivate. So I do a lot of expressive in arts. I do a lot of play therapy, positive psychology, CBT, and there's so much that you can kind of adapt to it. Dr. Janina Scarlett does superhero therapy and writes lots of books about it. And she puts a lot of with ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. So it's very adaptable. So it's not a one size fits all, which I appreciate because all of your clients are going to need different sizes and fits to what you want to be able to do. And it also allows that creativity for you and the client on both levels to be creative and to form that relationship and rapport and trust because you're meeting them on a level of something they're into and they're interested in. And anytime you want to add stuff, just stop me, Mariah. And then my big thing is the autonomy and engagement. So when you are speaking in something that someone is interested in, they're way more likely to come to sessions. They're way more likely to do the work in the session because you're on what they want, something that they're genuinely into, and don't necessarily realize right off the bat that it's super therapeutic. So it gives that, like, it's like your veil, it's like your disguise, it's your cape to kind of get some work done without it feeling like super you're trying to fix them or something. And autonomy, there's definitely a level of distance when you have a client who isn't to the point of saying, I feel blank, blank, blank. They can say, you know, I like this character because things that he goes through, I understand what he's going through. There's a safety distance there. And for a lot of clients, especially in the beginning, they're not to that point of sharing that, but you can start drawing those parallels and making the connection because they have that safety net to show you without saying I. They show you through somebody else's viewpoint. Anything else, Mariah, on this one?
Just kind of a funny tweet that I've seen that was very relatable as it went as viral as you can on Twitter. That is my emotional support main character. Please do not harm it. And so people will often project a lot of their internal experience, and we'll get more into that in a few minutes.
And, you know, and really realizing that this isn't just for children and teens, that adults, I mean, I'm in my 30s. And when the Snyder Cut came out, like we got HBO Max so we could watch the Snyder Cut. Like people are invested in the characters and the shows and the fandoms that they like, and use that if they're willing to your advantage to build that trust and work with them in counseling. Okay. So here are just a couple of images of some villains. So this one is definitely a Disney villains one. And I will admit, I work primarily with younger adults and do a lot with younger adults. So I sometimes stick more in this realm because that is who they are more familiar with. And then in this one, it is some of the superhero villain, the villains from the superheroes. I'm not as, I know like very popular ones, but I'm not as familiar with some of the ones that I don't see as often. I'm not sure about Mariah, where she falls on the spectrum of her fandoms.
I definitely am more into the superhero side of supervillain side of things, Marvel, DC. So yeah.
And then also asking your clients what they're into. Like I flat ask them, and then using that, if it's somebody you're not super familiar with, asking them about them, telling them to tell you about them and what pulls them to that character or that fandom. And then, you know, making an effort to learn about them because it's going to show that you care enough to invest your own brain power into learning.
And oftentimes, by asking about a character that's not related to them, they'll tell you a lot more about themselves just by talking about the character than they will ever have told you about themselves, especially if they're a bit hesitant at the beginning of the therapeutic process?
So just a couple of terms. So the anti-hero is often a central character or the protagonist in the story, movie, or drama, but they lack conventional heroic attributes. So conventional heroics are optimism, honesty, strength, confidence, courage, virtue. So that's when you think of like Superman, Wonder Woman, like your typical, this is your hero, this is who society thinks is on the pedestal, this is the good being. The unconventional attributes are more like cynicism, deceit, frailty, insecurity, cowardice, or vice. So these are ones, they're not necessarily bad, but they're not like the Superman model of heroic. And for some reason, my person, there it goes. And then you got villains. So these are the characters who have evil actions, motives, and it's important to the plot. So a villain has to be evil. Like they have to have some form of evil doing. And they can be a protagonist, but it's still a evil protagonist. So they're going to have, dark thoughts and motives for the plot line. And when you think of these, both are similar in the fact that they don't have conventional heroic attributes, but the anti-hero has attributes that aren't really evil, they're just not conventional heroics. Villains are also anti-heroes, but all anti-heroes, but not all anti-heroes are villains, but all villains must be villains because they have to be evil. So that is how you kind of can differentiate, and we'll go through a list of some. Sorry, my nose is a little itchy. So here are a couple, here's just like, this is not exhaustive. There are so many out there. Just trying to give you some idea of how to differentiate them. So like anti-heroes. So Jack Skellington in The Nightmare Before Christmas. Iago. Elsa is actually identified as an anti-hero. Wreck-It Ralph, Joy in Inside Out, which I found interesting, was actually on quite a few of the lists. Deadpool is probably the most well-known anti-hero. Like when you talk about anti-heroes, he makes like the top 5 every time. Han Solo, Captain Jack Sparrow, Severus Snape, Maleficent. And I think Maleficent's on here now because of the Maleficent movies. If you would have just went pre-Maleficent movies, she would have just been on the villain track. So it also depends on where their storylines have come and how well the public knows them. Then you have Venom. He's gotten much more popular now since the movie had come out. I've noticed with my clients. Blade and Wolverine. And then you have like villains. So Miss Trunchbull, Scar, the Joker, the Fairy Godmother from Shrek, the White Witch from Narnia, Thanos, Voldemort, Cruella de Vil, Wicked Witch of the West. Now people can argue could be more of an anti-hero now because of Wicked. So it also depends on what your clientele is viewing and their viewpoint of the story. Lord Farquaad, Dolores Umbridge, Darth Vader, Gaston, Captain Hook, and Hades from Hercules. Do you have any more you wanted to add, Mariah, or any key points?
No, but I did want to add that Hades can often be seen as an anti-hero too, depending on the telling. In the Hades game, it's debatable. In a very popular webcomic, Lore Olympus, Hades is not a villain at all. He's an anti-hero. So a lot of these can depend on the telling, depending on who you are. Now, of course, some of them, like Voldemort and Thanos, are always going to be evil and villains, but some others can be more ambiguous.
And I did see a meme the other day. So I feel like me and Mariah both enjoy memes to a degree, probably of a lot. And there was one, and it said, everybody's so mad at Hades in the cartoon Hercules. But in reality, he's the only one actually doing his job throughout the film. Like he's truly just doing his job. But everybody's always like, you're evil. And he's like, I'm just doing my job, man. Just doing my job. Like, so I think that's a funny way to look at it. Like he's just doing what was given to him as a role, whether or not we think it's good or bad. It's just his job. He's filling out He's checking his boxes. Here are just some theoretical orientations that are often associated. So you have superhero therapy, which you can find quite a few TED Talks and books by Dr. Janina Scarlett about superhero therapy. And it is very, she has one that's just all about the superhero quest and using ACT, and it's built through like a comic type book. Play therapy is one I prescribe to a lot, and one of the really good ones, resources, is this book, The Using Superheroes and Villains in Counseling and Play Therapy, and it breaks down different theoretical orientations and different ways to view it and how to use it in case studies. Existential therapy, cinema therapy, which is another one I use a lot, is you can use movie clips to demonstrate or viewpoint or look at things. Narrative therapy is another one I use personally quite a bit. It's rewriting it, externalizing the problem, and getting the ability to rewrite that story and letting your client take like the wheel over what's going to happen and the narrative that's surrounding it. And then CBT. Do you have any specific ones that you tend to lean with, Mariah?
I'll sometimes like relate skills and DBT to, which is, just an offshoot of CBT in a lot of ways. But I would relate those to characters if possible. And you put me on the spot, so I'm not able to think of them off the top of my head.
It's fine.
Maybe I will in a minute.
I always just go with my intuition. Truly, like I feel it, I kind of go with it. And usually as counselors, because we all are superheroes, we can figure out exactly what we're doing as we go. So I believe that. So this is going to be Mariah.
So the parasocial relationships is actually my dissertation topic, part of my dissertation topic. And parasocial relationships are where people experience genuine connection that rivals regular interactions with others, to characters, to celebrities, to people, or beings that cannot reciprocate that energy, but people will pour their energy into them anyway. And we find this very often happens with kids when they get really like sometimes hyper fixated on different kinds of media. But it also can happen with adults. I've worked with plenty of adults who are very, very into their fandoms, and will project the relationships that they need, and my hypothesis is a lot of their attachment styles onto certain characters. And these characters are not limited to heroes, as we've kind of already started talking about. There can absolutely be villains as well. Pictured here is Killmonger from the Black Panther. And a lot of people really sympathize with what Killmonger, and his name is a little bit dark if you haven't seen the movie, but they really sympathize with the rage that he has, because it's very relatable. So people will often get really into their relationships with characters and will be very invested in their outcomes, and like will write their own stories about it. If you've probably have clients who write fan fiction and maybe you haven't thought to ask, because fan fiction is such a very popular thing to do when you're very invested in characters. So they may already be writing these stories so you can absolutely utilize them. But yeah, a lot of people will be in parasocial relationships with characters, and those might switch through time.
And when their fandom has completed, or like the movies are done, or they're not writing them anymore, they have a lot of feelings about that, because that's a big part of their life that has stopped or changed, or if their character isn't going to be there anymore at all. Definitely some feelings and things to explore.
There's this is off topic, but on topic, like Avatar: The Last Airbender has been off the air for 10-15 years, something like that. And yes, it had the reboot of Korra, but Korra's been off the air for quite a few years as well. And they still have people regularly, like daily, you'll see new fanfics show up on Wattpad and AO3, which is Archive of Our Own, regularly showing up these fanfics for these characters who are sometimes older than the people writing about them.
Yep. So don't ever discount that this could be a really big part of your client's existence and life and interests. So one of the exercises that I often use is reframe the story, which we do a lot of reframing as counselors. And this is where we talked about the viewpoint. Are you an anti-hero? Are you a villain? Are you really a villain? Is based on that viewpoint and that telling or your understanding of the story. So one of the things I like to do with clients is I have them pick a favorite villain, an anti-hero, somebody that they want to work with. And often you can research the background together, or you can go based off the fact most of your clients might already have the background and have them tell you that. And then you reframe this well-known story and you discuss the differences of the background that has come out or is shown or is different in a new telling of the story. And then talk about how this anti-hero or villain has been misunderstood, or maybe the understanding of the motive. So Maleficent is one of the big ones that a lot of clients have done. So if you would watch the old school cartoon Sleeping Beauty, it is going to show Maleficent is just evil and, she wants to harm Aurora. She wants to, she got hurt, so she's going to hurt him back and all this stuff happens. But then when you actually watch Maleficent, you can see the motivation behind it, and that storytelling was much more deeper than just, I didn't get invited to a party. And it's one where you're allowing the client to reframe and discuss that. And it also teaches to reframe situations and to change viewpoints. So you're going to increase that ability to look at other sides of stories, problems, situations, and things that happen in events that often cause distress or stressors for your clients. And then discuss how your client views the story. Because while it's important we understand the story and what's going on, the key is how your client is viewing this story. So Maleficent is one. Who are a couple? Captain Hook. I had a kid pick Captain Hook once, and I thought that was an interesting one to pick. And he goes, well, let's think about it. Like, he's a grown up and he's in this place and he's just a pirate and he's fighting with this like teenager kid. The kid cut his hand off and fed it to an alligator. Most of us aren't going to just walk away from that. We're going to probably want revenge. We're probably going to want to like fight back. And the kid goes, I just think it's really unfair that everybody acts like he's not allowed to be mad, because I would be mad. And I was like, you know what? You're right. That is true. And a lot of this with Wicked, that's another one. So Gregory Maguire and his entire series of books, I don't know if anybody else has read any of them. He has one, he has the Wicked one, which is the Wicked Witch of the West. And then there's another one that is, it's Cinderella, but it's told from one of the stepsisters' sides of the story. So it's just a whole different viewpoint of everything that happens. It's just looking at the same story differently and that viewpoint. And then we're going to watch a clip next with Scar, because Scar is always identified as one of like the top 5 favorite villains for people. I think it's probably because The Lion King is pretty well known. And then they just did the live adaptation, and it's been on Broadway. Do you have any other ones that you can think of, Mariah, that you feel get a bad rap? You can say no too. It's okay.
Yes and no. I actually had just been thinking about this shortly before our presentation. And it might be reframing in the opposite direction of what you're talking about. But has anybody here seen WandaVision? It's a new Marvel show on Disney Plus, and Wanda's just trying to live her best life. And it turns out that she's done some really awful things in order to live her best life. but she didn't even know about it until later. So I mean, that sometimes could be a reframe as well. Not necessarily a positive one. But
also knowing that not all reframes will go good. Like
yeah.
Sometimes you're going to get another viewpoint and you might realize, well, maybe I shouldn't have did that.
Yeah.
Like
definitely.
if I look at it, in that moment, I reacted with my feeling and my actions. I didn't think about how it affected someone else. So that's normalizing that for your client, because it happens, because we're human. But yeah, so the reframe of the story is just a different viewpoint. So we are going to actually watch a clip next, and it is from, so any of you, if you have small children or work with small children and watch The Lion Guard, I have had it inundated in my head forever. It's never going to leave again. So this song is actually one that I've had quite a few clients focus on, because they want to talk about the actions of Scar. And this gives you the pre-story to when him and Mufasa were younger.
Have I ever told you how I got my scar?
No, you haven't.
I wasn't much older than Kion when it happened. Back when I was leader of my Lion Guard. When I was the Lion Guard's fiercest, I took most patrols on my own. So when I met this strange lion, I had no fear of being alone. He said he had wisdom and power, and the most powerful should be king. With help from me and my roar, he and I could rule everything. I found his idea intriguing, though the most powerful lion was me. But the strange lion was scheming and had a friend I didn't see. That's how I got my scar, when I led the guard. The lion would cure the snake's venom as long as I did what he said. But I lost control and enraged, I roared and destroyed them instead. I expected to be praised near and far for stopping that treacherous thing. But Mufasa just nicknamed me Scar. Then I knew that he shouldn't be king. That's when I became Scar, when I led the guard. My first plot for vengeance was spoiled when I lost the roar. My second plan later succeeded. Mufasa was king no more. If it weren't for that miserable Simba, I have ruled Pride Rock to this day. But now it is time for Simba and Kion to pay. That's why I still am scarred from when destroy the god.
Oops.
This is the checkers game where...
So it just gives more of a backstory, because Scar's real name is not actually Scar, it was Taka. And that was how it became known as Scar, and where all of his, I mean, he was already a little on the jealous end, but how it kind of fueled that negative need to become king. So it's just something interesting to add to your brain power.
Well, and sadly for Scar, Taka means dirt in Swahili. So he really just had it bad.
So
from
he
the
was
get-go.
set up for negativity from the beginning.
Yeah, he didn't really have much of a chance here.
All right, this one's yours.
So I want to talk a bit about coding and characters. And I don't know if any of you know much about coding, but specifically race and queer coding and specific villains. A lot of marginalized people will relate to certain characters because of the way the characters are portrayed. Now, up until like the early 2000s, you were not allowed to have a person, an LGBTQ plus person in your content without making them miserable. It wasn't allowed. You couldn't have a happy LGBTQ plus person. So this led to a lot of tropes. And a lot of villains end up, because naturally they're going to be thwarted, you know, in our traditional media. They are allowed to be queer coded to hopefully deter. The hope was to deter children from being LGBTQ plus. So we often see the characters acting in ways that are related or have mannerisms related to LGBTQ plus people. And then we also have characters who are people of color as well. And especially if you are intersectional, if you have multiple types of marginalization, maybe the only characters you can find representative of yourself are the villains, really, in traditional media. Now that's starting to shift, obviously, because you can have LGBTQ plus characters. You can have them be happy in your media now, and you can have people of color live till the end of your media now, whereas before that was a really terrible trope. But like Ursula in The Little Mermaid was originally modeled after drag queens, and a lot of people think that she has a lot of mannerisms of a Black woman. So there's that. And then Jafar has some LGBTQ plus mannerisms. Him from Powerpuff Girls is literally dressed in drag, and his name is Him. And then Hades also has LGBTQ plus mannerisms, typical of like more of a gay man. And then the doctor from Princess and the Frog, there's actually some other issues with him as well, considering he's kind of modeled after Baron Samedi, and I'm probably saying that wrong, so forgive me. But in voodoo culture, and that borrowing is very problematic in a lot of ways. But all of these characters can be representative of marginalized populations, and so we need to be aware that maybe the only representation some of our clients have had or have been exposed to are the villains. That's the only way they can see themselves, even if they don't necessarily directly identify with the villain's motives.
Very good point. I did not know that. I had read that Ursula was modeled after a very specific drag queen. I had read that in an article. This is where, like, a client actually brought this to me, memes that make you think. So there are some really good thought-provoking memes out there. If you follow pop culture fan sites, or you follow counseling and pop culture type of blogs and things. So this is one that somebody had shared with me, and it was relating to Thor, Loki, and Hela from the Ragnarok film with Thor. And it talks about how they could have been the most powerful trio, but their dad just was really bad at parenting. And like, so, you know, kind of made us have a really, really big conversation over something that is a really difficult conversation when you have people that feel like how they were parented, or expectations, or how their relationship with siblings through the parent, and that whole system's approach.
أنا معكم بس باسم زوجي لأنه فاتحة اللابتوب تبعي.
Okay. And then, so it's, and that's something that when a client wants to talk about, you're going to take the opportunity to talk about it, because, you know, Hela was a product of her upbringing. Odin had Hela. He trained her to conquer and to be like this mega warrior, which I think is great that it was a female, because typically they would put that on a male character. So it was great that they put it on a female character to be this great, it was great that they actually did it with a daughter. But then when Odin's motives changed, he decided he didn't want to conquer anymore. He wanted to live out his golden days. And that's like before he had, like, either he hadn't had Thor yet, or he hadn't gotten around to it yet. So when Hela couldn't just change because Odin changed, he literally entombed her, and she was entombed until his death. And then you add in Loki. So Loki was adopted. Odin found him, so he adopted him as a small boy. And a lot of Loki's motives are he wants to prove that he is bigger than Thor. Like it's like a constant competition. It's a jealousy thing. It's I want to make my own way. I want to do this. I want to be seen. I want to be seen as Loki, as doing something, not as that boy that Odin picked up and, got lucky. And Loki does a lot of character changing over, like he has a lot of character changes and arcs, and he has a new series coming out this summer, which I'm excited to watch because I personally like Loki. Thor's fine, but I prefer Loki. I think he has more of an interesting dynamic, but that's my thing. So this is an example of how you can talk about outside influences and how they work within our, how we react to that. So how was Hela unfairly treated? Like she was created for this purpose, but then when her dad changed his mind, she became his adversary, no longer his ally. And she was literally created for what she was doing. Like that was her, even when she comes back, that's her mindset. I have to conquer and take over because this is what I was trained for. And then also if you have blended families or adopted families, like that differential feeling between Thor and Loki, that difference of feeling where Thor's like, and then there's another one I laugh at. Thor's like, well, we're brothers. So like he killed X amount of people in 10 minutes. Yeah. Okay. So he's adopted like real fast. Like Thor throws that out there after Loki has done something negative from other people. So he just, yeah, we're brothers, connection. Oh, he did something bad, push it away. He's just adopted. We're not really biologically related. And then also in a lot of the storylines, clients have focused that they feel like Thor just has this entitlement and expectation. Like, well, I'm Odin's son. Therefore, this is all guaranteed to me because of that factor. And, having that feeling. So if a sibling says, well, I'm not the favorite, I'm not the one who's always doing what my parents want, like, so they just get everything and I'm over here, so I'm just going to do what I want. So realizing how your clients view it, and these are just ones that I see a lot of repetition with clients with, is the trio of Odin's kids. And how, managed differently, it could have been a different outcome than what it was.
And focusing back on Hela for a second, Hela, like you might have kids whose older siblings, like maybe their parents were not necessarily great and their older siblings are in custody of somebody else, but have changed their minds with their younger children. So you might have older children who don't live with their biological parents, but who have siblings who do, who feel like Hela. And that's, understandable and very common, I think, in those certain family dynamics.
Fully agree. Right, this one's you.
So I want to talk a little bit about, because like redemption arcs, because certain people might have relationships to villains who have then become maybe not heroes, but at least anti-heroes. So we have pictured first Regina Mills, who is the evil queen in Once Upon a Time, and over her character arc she tries and tries and tries, and she finally succeeds in gaining the trust of others. But she originally starts, literally they call her the evil queen way more than once. And then probably the most well done redemption arcs out there is Prince Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender, who realizes what he's doing is not good and is the product of having very toxic parents and a toxic upbringing, and he's able to kind of turn his life around, but it's very difficult to do that and to make amends to the people that he's harmed. And then we have Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, who is one of the more powerful people in the show, who decides that he's going to change. He's not going to be the primary antagonist anymore. He needs to ally with others. And then we have Endeavor from My Hero Academia. You probably have a lot of clients who watch My Hero Academia. It's one of the most popular animes out there right now. And he's actually an abusive father who then, like, over his arc will changes to be more beneficial and helpful. The next two are Catra and Scorpia from She-Ra. And both of them start out with a group literally called the Horde, and throughout the show rely on connections with others to kind of bring them out of that. And then there's Bellamy Clark from the 100, who starts out as a really big jerk, only caring about himself, to genuinely caring about the people in his group. And so redemption arcs are kind of amazing to see. And you can often frame clients as having redemption arcs themselves, and they might relate to some of these characters or more. This is not a comprehensive list either.
There are so many that we could never talk about all of them. So one I use often is Ninja Turtles and Shredder. So a lot of times I will compare the parenting. If you compare Shredder to Splinter and their paternal influence or male dominated influence in someone's life, so clients' lives, it's not always a parent, but it could just be a parental influence, like a father figure. It could be an uncle, a foster parent, a teacher. It could be anybody that they identify. And when we think about Shredder, is focusing that he motivates those around him by fear, and he will pull his affection if you don't meet his demand. So if you do not do as he wants, like, he is going to pull affection, and he motivates you because you're scared of him. You're going to do XYZ because you're scared of the outcome. You don't want him to pull affection. He often pits others against one another, even within his own group of the Foot, because he just doesn't care about them on a personal level. He just wants the end result. And he focuses on his needs. He doesn't care about the kids that are following him, that he's picking up off the street. He's going to give them, the like the forbidden treasures, like often like cigarette smoking, stealing money, no, not a lot of rules kind of thing, because he wants them to fulfill his needs of what he wants to accomplish. And it opens up a lot on like parental alienation, blended families, struggles between parents and children. And then in a lot of the series for Ninja Turtles, I've not watched all them all, but I've watched quite a few of them, is they feature Karai, who was Splinter's daughter, and Shredder steals her as an infant and then brainwashes her that he is her father and against Splinter. And that is a big factor that kids have brought up, is that, when their parents have split, one of the influences tries to pit them against a different parental influence. And, they feel that split feeling because we believe those that, we believe our parental figures. And and who you're with the most, like, it's going to happen, or it's going to change your viewpoint, or it's going to make you think things that you wouldn't have thought before. So Shredder is a really good one. And the storyline with Karai and Splinter also is another good one. And there's a lot you can do with Ninja Turtles. And then you have unlikely appearances. So not everybody is going to look like a villain. Not everybody's going to look bad and scary and, off-putting for you. And I think that this one's really good. Like, Toy Story taught us that appearances really do trick us. So Lotso looks like this cuddly, sweet bear, and we're all friends and we all do our time and I fully understand. But then as soon as you go against what he says, he's like a mob boss, actually. He actually reminds me of The Godfather in that a lot with his cane. And here you have the toy that has been deconstructed by Sid, who looks physically off-putting, but is actually there to help and is nice and, friendly. So, and then you have Dolores Umbridge, who is probably one of the most ones when people talk about unlikely villains. She wears pink. She's surrounded by cats. She looks like this sweet lady. She talks really nice. But when you actually listen to the words that are coming out of her mouth, they're not nice. They're very passive aggressive. And a lot of people identify with that because a lot of things people endure or experience are passive aggressive. They're not straight, hostile, mean acts. They are more subtle. And then you have like Poison Ivy, or you have like the attractive female villains that, because they are physically attractive, we don't necessarily think they're bad. And a lot of times you see like the hero in the story getting caught up because they fall, or like the physically attractive person who's like the villain or the bad one. And it is like they talk about it on different crime shows that like if you are physically attractive, that people are more likely to trust you just because you're physically attractive. So that is something that is real when people have dealt with the villains in their own life. Is these are the things that you might see. It might not be the person we automatically think looks like the bad guy. It's sometimes it can be misleading, and to be able to have those conversations when clients talk about that and recognizing that. One I've used often is motivators. So when you talk about like the dark side in Star Wars, and you talk about the Sith, these are the different categories that they can identify with or fall under in that storyline. So in that story series, and a lot of times I will have this out there, and you can kind of have the client pick like their motivator, where they fall, where people in their story falls. It can be any way that they're going to construct the story. So they're just different categories. So like ruler, I want to build, like I want to be powerful. I want to build this big thing. Consumer. So consumption is the focus. The warrior. So defeating others, fighting. So that is the one that Darth Maul falls under, is the warrior. Like his focus is like physical fighting. The savior. So I want to gain new power to save others. So I can justify the means because I get to the end. Like it doesn't matter what I have to do. If I get to that end, but I saved others, I'm the savior. Lore keeper. So the knowledge and secrets, it's like the wisdom like type. Hedonist. So take pleasures, doesn't care about the suffering of others because you're focused on your own pleasure. That one gets picked a lot. And the fundamentalist, like I want to restore the glory of what I believe in and the culture that I believe in my viewpoint. So this is just different classifications from if you are into Star Wars or you have clients that are into Star Wars. We are not going to watch this because we're going to run out of time. But if you would like to look it up, it is actually the Jedi meditation versus Sith meditation. And it discusses like the differences that fuel someone's focus and drive and meaning, because and it references a lot in the fight scene where Obi-Wan is going against Darth Maul, and where Obi-Wan, like there's the gate between Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon Jinn, and he sits and he's like meditating to calm and find his center. And Darth Maul is pulling on all this rage and all this anger. And that is what's going to fuel him for this big event. So finding that motivator, often that is what's fueling behaviors, fueling someone's drive, fueling someone's functioning, is often a good thing. So this is a really good, it's very well done. It's very well explained. And this person, the guy that does these videos, is really, really good. So it's the Jedi meditation versus Sith meditation. And pause. Okay. The next one is the two-sided mask. So you have where you can have a client identify a villain, anti-hero, or hero. They can pick whoever they want. And then you ask them to pick another. So this is the one either they want to be, or they feel like somebody else wants them to be, or they feel like they are some of the time, or they used to be before something happened. And then the other persona, behavior, thought, goals, whatever they want to focus on. And you can either have them draw both of the faces, or you can print them off depending on, if your client is comfortable with art or would rather you print them off. And then what you do is you physically make a two-faced mask. So you're going to literally make one is one half and one is the other half. And you're going to explore with them what those mean. When do those different pieces, go in? And it's that conversation of, Maybe this is what I do and this is what I want to do. Or maybe these are the two things that I hear in my head when I'm trying to make decisions. Or this is how I used to feel and now this is how I feel because something happened. So there's a lot of exploring, and you can do this at different arcs in your counseling series to see, does it change? Does as they go through, does the Venom mask get smaller and Spider-Man get bigger? Or does the Hulk take over and Bruce Banner gets smaller? So they can even be the alter egos of different characters. Who takes over, Harvey Dent or Two-Face? Which one? Or you can have ones that I have a lot of people who pick Venom and then they pick Superman because they want to be Superman. They want to be that, but they feel Venom's always in there telling them to do bad stuff. So that's one of those ones that you can even use throughout your sessions to gauge where your clients are heading or how they feel like they're growing. Creating new narratives. This is a clip from Wreck-It Ralph, and it's in the beginning of the movie, and it's called Baton On. It's like all the bad characters from the video games are meeting, and they're discussing, and and that's when Ralph's like, "Oh, it's like my 30th anniversary, and I just don't think I want to be the bad guy anymore. Like, I'm tired of being labeled bad. Like, I don't want to do this anymore." And everybody's like, "What? You can't do that. That's your role, man." And how many times do we have clients that feel pigeonholed in the role that they've been given by family, by society, by circumstances? And so this is a
sometimes
good clip
by other
to use.
clinicians.
Or by other counselors. I have a lot of that, like, or even at school, I've been labeled the bad kid, so I might as well just be the bad kid. And I'm like, I don't believe in bad kids. Like, I don't believe that. And that kind of conversation. It's a very short clip. It's less than 3 minutes, so you don't have to worry about it taking over your session. So with that, you would watch that clip and you would have your client choose the villains, anti-heroes, heroes. So whoever they want to incorporate in this support group. And paper dolls, real life action figures, however they want to represent whatever you have in your room, like however you're going to do that. And then stage a role play and play where the client is in control of this meeting and the dialogue. And allow the client to either tell you what to say, or sometimes clients just take full control of the conversation and do different voices, and it really gets them in the flow of the action of play. And then they discuss different personas, problems, anything that the client has created. And you're going to see a lot of things that the client's probably not telling you straight out play out in this thing, because there's that safety with using a character as the mouthpiece. And then participate or watch. So this is their show. You can spectate if they want you to, or you can be an active role. That is typically, I let the client determine that. And then if you don't have someone who's into that, but is a little older, I have some that are like, I'd rather draw a comic. I get the comic strips out and they draw this, and we use like the conversation bubbles. So there's multiple ways to do this, but it's a good way to use role play and play where they can talk about different things in different circumstances and ideas that have that they could be struggling with, and processing it, talking about it, where I noticed this. A lot of these are also good to just normalize mental health is there, because a lot of people still have that really negative connotation, and we know that comes from a lot of external forces in our lives and society as a whole. So like Kylo Ren, there's a lot of really good arcs in that, like the rage, the feeling of abandonment, the grief, the PT, like all of that is in there. Mr. Freeze, like his wife died, and that's what motivated a lot of his behaviors. The movie The Joker showed a lot of oppression and marginalization to him. And then he finally just throws his hands up and is like, I'm done. Like, I'm going to point this out and I'm done with it. I'm not sure who you added here, Mariah. I don't know who that character is.
Samaru Shigaraki from My Hero Academia is the main villain. But his power is to destroy, like he turns things to dust. So maybe, of course, he was always going to be the villain.
Right. He didn't get a chance. He got pigeonholed early. So just that conversation of normalizing, and telling kids like a lot of things have happened. That doesn't make you the villain. Like, let's talk about it. So we're gonna do questions, but if that's my email, and then on Two Nerdy Counselors is myself and another colleague. We do a lot of stuff about cinema therapy, geek therapy culture, and give free resources. So a lot of the stuff like with characters and fandoms will be featured on there. So you can go there to follow us and learn about good resources if this is kind of stuff that you're interested in. Does anyone have any questions, any comments? We are completely open, and I think we have a couple of minutes. Okay. We gotta thank you.
I had a question if it's not too late.
No, go right ahead.
I was just wondering, I recently watched the Billie Eilish documentary, and I know she's kind of known for her speaking about mental health and that a lot of her fans relate to her on that. And I was wondering if you ever think about pop stars in a similar context of anti-heroes, villains, or heroes.
Absolutely. So many of my kids love Billie Eilish for that. So we absolutely process using pop stars too. There's a reason that there's so many resources on all different kinds of like superheroes and things like that, because those are totally applicable. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I was just wondering if you view Billie Eilish as an anti-hero, a hero, or villain. And I'm actually curious if a lot of your clients, they like her. What is it about her?
I have clients that love her. She talks about, I think she normalizes a lot of how they feel. And she's very honest about like having, crisis and suicidal ideations, and that, money isn't everything. Money and fame is not everything. And then also like going after people who criticize how she looks or her body type, and, is very much positive self-acceptance. I don't classify her under like the title of anti-hero, villain, or hero. But a lot of the clients, a lot of them like the stuff. And like, I think she was part of like the movement, like embrace the awkward. And I thought that was like a great thing, because not everybody is like the stereotypical popular kid who's like super confident and comfortable in all situations. Like a lot of us feel anxiety and feel awkward a lot of the time. And it's okay to be that way.
Definitely. We don't want to characterize real people as heroes, anti-heroes, or villains, because there's too many nuances there for a real person.
Right, of course. Thank you.
But parents don't like her, typically, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do have more parents that prefer her over like straight rap music, because she doesn't like say lots of cuss words. Now, some of her videos I don't fully understand, but it's also not something that relates to me. So like, I just ask the client to explain to me what they relate to.
Someone's asking if you can show us the book about using villains in therapy again.
I put the name in it. It's called Using Superheroes and Villains in Counseling and Play Therapy. I wrote the title into the chat box, so everybody should have been able to see that.
Thank you.
And it's a very good resource. Where do you find download recording of today's session? That is a question for Debbie.
And that's a question I don't know the answer to. I don't know that I know they're recording him today, but I don't think there's a place to rewatch it.
Anybody else? Because we're at the 11 o'clock, so I don't want to keep you. I know you have other presentations to attend. I thank you for coming to ours and sharing our love of all of this with you.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you very much. It was very informative.
Thank you. in the area. I'm going to go ahead and pause recording.